Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Timber's Den. My name is Whitney. This is Anya. She's going to be hanging out today. And today we're going to be going over my stats for 2024, and also the best and worst books of the year. And so yeah, let's go ahead and just jump right in. We're going to start with the stats. Then we're going to go over the worst books. The best books, I have 3 categories for best books because in my monthly wrap-ups, I do, star ratings, but I also do top 3 just as far as books that really were impactful or stuck with me in some way. And so I also have those. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So I read 236 books. My goal was 100, so obviously far surpassed that. Unread from my TBR, so books that I put on my TBR but I didn't actually get read, were 39. Page count was 69,302, and I had 104 audio hours, 104 hours and 19 minutes. Average pages per day was 189.34. My audio average was 17.1 minutes. My best month of the year, both by number of books and page count, which makes sense. The last year, one of them it was split. But my best month was September. I read 54 books, and I had read 12,082 pages. My worst month of the year was November. I only read 6 books, and that equaled 1,840 pages. I had 7 DNFs. 2 stars were 24, 3 stars I had 37, 4 stars I had 69, and 5 stars I had 106. I held 375 books. Of those, I read 79. I unhauled 135 books. I had 47 rereads, and I read 15 nonfiction. My top genres, I had 76 fantasy, 56 contemporary, 52 middle grade, 47 romance, 33 historical, 31 young adult. My top moods were, I had 93 that fell under the adventurous mood, 91 that were emotional, 74 that were mysterious, 63 were lighthearted, 58 were dark, and I had 38 books that were funny. So those are my stats for the year. Obviously, I think I overall did pretty well. And I'm really, really happy with that. So we're going to go ahead and go through the worst books first. So I did these. I took them from each month. So I'm pitting the months against each other. And so first up for January, we had Cassidy by Lori Wick, which this was part of my ABC title challenge. This was for my C title. And you had Cassidy, who was a seamstress. I can't talk. And she moves to this town, but she has this secret past. It is a Christian fiction, and one of my issues when I read Christian fictions is sometimes the whole thing is just find God and everything will be okay. And I don't like that in Christian fiction books. I find it really off-putting because it's not very realistic. So that was part of it, and then kind of the backstory with the plot and such. Like, I just didn't think the characters were very engaging or the plot was very engaging. So we have that one, and then the other one that I do not have, I actually already unhauled it, not thinking about it, but that was Bittersweet by Vince Kelly. If I can find a picture, I'll put it here. I think it was just like a random like indie published poetry book I found. And it just, one, I'm not a big poetry person in general, and I didn't find the poems very good. They didn't have good flow to them, and there wasn't really a cohesive theme to them in the collection, and so that's kind of why it was in the bottom there that month for February. And for this one, against the two, kind of knowing I'm not a big poetry person in general, I decided Cassidy between the two was the worst book there. So we have that one. Then we have for let's see, January, February, March, we had Dark Summer by Irish Johansen. I really like Irish Johansen. I have the majority of her collection. I don't have the the last couple newest ones, and her past, like when she was a romance author. I don't have a lot of those, but her suspense books, thriller books, I have all of those minus, like I said, the newest ones. And so I was excited to get into this one, and it wasn't good. You have Devin, and she's a veterinarian. And then this man arrives with his black lab, Ned, and it's Jude is his name. And there's something special about these dogs. And the premise was cool, but it wasn't very well executed. And so that's why that one's there. And then we also had the Iliad by Homer. And this one, I just like, they had components that were really good, but the whole so and so, son of so and so, like it took me forever to get through the Iliad, and I just hated that aspect of it. But between these two, I think Dark Summer was worse. You know, you gotta give a little grace to a classic. So I personally think Dark Summer was worse than that one. Then let's see here. So that's January, February, March, April. We have May. I read just the first one. This is a bind up, but I read A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And again, the writing could have been a kind of interesting premise. You have this guy, and I want to say there's some kind of war. He's in the war of some sort, I believe. But anyway, he goes and he finds this like Native American spot, and he gets like transported to Mars, and he's trying to figure it out. And there's these green people with many arms that he kind of gets picked up by, and they have this princess captive, and he immediately falls in love. And the princess just had no depth to her, which was a shame. Like, it was very much written by a male, and you can tell that. So there was that one, and then it's up against, what is it up against? Oh, okay. And it went up against Neuromancer by William Gibson, which was another one for my title challenge. And this one, again, had really good components to it, but it just was written by a male. So there was like these weird, freaky sexual things and such. And overall, I did not have a good time with this. Out of these two, though, I did have components I liked of this. So Princess of Mars is worse, for sure. So there's that. Then we had these two. So we had The House of the Seven Sisters by Elle Eggels. And this one, it just wasn't, I mean, it's really short one, and you're following these 7 different sisters, and it just wasn't very well developed. The characters, like, all of them had some big tragedy, and it was so dramatic, and just didn't have a good time with it. The Stories of Eva Luna is what it's up against by Isabel Allende, and this one, it was the content. I really like Isabel Allende's writing, but the content in here, it was very romanticizing, like, improper relationship, assault, things like that. And yeah, I just didn't like the content. Now, the stories are from one of her characters. So I really want to read Eva Luna, and see if maybe that changes my opinion on this. So out of these two, I would say The House of the Seven Sisters was definitely worse. Then let's see here, we had A Holiday Memory by Lauren Brooke. This is a special edition from the Heartland series, and this is actually reflecting on the Christmas before Amy's mother dies. So Heartland series, if you don't know, you have Amy, and her mom rescues horses and works with like troubled horses, traumatized horses, and such. And she convinces her mom to go and rescue this horse, and there ends up being an accident, and her mom ends up passing away. And that's the start of the series, and then it's all about Amy kind of trying to carry on her mom's work. So this is reflecting on the Christmas prior to those events. And my problem with this one is I had read the whole series right before reading this one, and the author just kind of went off like and decided to create stuff that never happened in the series or go against things that happened in the series, and that really upset me. Then we have Unspoken. If you really want to know my thoughts, go on Goodreads because I do a whole rant in my review of this one. It is bad. Like, all the men are just misogynistic, like wondering what every woman they see is like in bed or reflecting on how they were in bed. The characters were really inconsistent. Again, kind of romanticizing an inappropriate relationship. This one way worse than this one. Like, yeah, I was mad at it because it changed things that were in the actual main series, but I still enjoyed the Heartland series. Like, they're cozy, they're a good time. This one was horrible. Definitely way worse. So there's that. And then the last two we have XO by Jeffery Deaver. Again, another one from my ABC title challenge. And in this one, you have Kaylee Town. She's like a up and coming, like pretty popular now, country singer, and she has a stalker. And this is part of a series, and so you have Catherine Dance, and she works for like the California Bureau of Investigation. And she's friends with Kaylee, and so she's coming to see the show. But then, the stalker incident and murder starts happening, and so she ends up getting involved with that. The writing, it was very mansplaining-ish, like every little thing, like mansplaining it to you. And again, just didn't really like the characters and didn't get a lot of depth from them. And then that's pitted against All I Want for Christmas by Maggie Knox. I just read this, and oh, this was so bad. Like, the characters are not likable. There's no depth to them, no depth to their interactions. You can't get behind them as a couple. So the premise of this one is you have Sadie and Max. And Max is the son of, I think he's country music, like, star. And then Sadie had a bad interaction with him at one point, and now they're on this reality TV show, like singing competition, and they end up getting paired up for duet week, and the fans love them, so the execs are like, you guys have to fake date and, be duoed up for the rest of the show. And every interaction, even the positive one, and then them bickering, she can't communicate to save her life. Every time something happens, he runs away, and just disappears and ghosts her. And it's just, I couldn't get behind the couple. They were very flat written. Like, all their interactions was like, okay, like, and they're upset. Like, they barely know each other. Like, they had this one little interaction that ended in a fight anyway. Like, what the heck? And so between these two, this at least had some components that were interesting. This one is worse. So then, let's see here. I'm gonna put Cassidy against Dark Summer. And out of these two, I like the premise of this, and I do like Irish Johansen. So I think Cassidy is the worst out of those two. Then we have Princess of Mars and the Seven Sisters, or the House of the Seven Sisters, and I'm gonna go with Princess of Mars as the worst one. And then lastly, we have Unspoken and All I Want for Christmas. And as much as I did not like this one was so problematic. It's definitely worse. So these are our bottom three. And out of these, I think Cassidy wasn't completely horrible. I like the historical element. And so this one is number 3. Number 2 goes to Unspoken. Even though it was problematic, like, and horrible, like, I was kind of invested in, like, there's kind of this mystery component which kept me reading to the end because I wanted to know there was 2 things, and I wanted to know about those 2 things. So the worst of the worst has to go to A Princess of Mars for sure. So yeah, these are our bottom 3 that are the worst of 2024 for me. So there are those. Oops, I just threw them, but that's okay. Now let's go ahead and do the best of 2024 by impact. So again, I have my star ratings and then I do my top 3, which are just books that kind of stuck with me. So they didn't necessarily like have a 5-star or whatnot, but they just kind of stuck with me for whatever reason. So first up, we have The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. And this one I still think about. Like, I really like the setting and the premise of it, and the ending. Like, I haven't continued the series yet, and I really need to, because obviously I read this January of last year. So I really need to continue on with the series, because I still keep thinking about it. But basically, you have Kiva, she ends up in this prison and she's the prison healer, and there's this prisoner that gets brought in, and her task is to keep her alive so she can face these trials. But this prisoner is really sick, like there's no way she's going to face any trials, so Kiva ends up stepping in for her, and if they win the trials they get their freedom essentially. And so there's like this elemental magic that's really cool and really enjoyable, and like I said, I absolutely love the ending. And then that one is Against Echo by Pam Muniz Ryan. And this one is a World War II, but it deals with like music. And I thought it was really beautiful. And it's World War II, and then it kind of goes to, I think, present day, or in the future at some point. But it deals with like musical instrument and music. And it's just really, really beautiful. But honestly, at this point, it's been so long, I don't remember this one as well as I remember this one. So this one definitely is the winner between these two. So there's that one. I'll put that over here. Then we have Shogun, which took me forever to read. And this one, it was a process. And so you have this Englishman, and he ends up in Japan. And then first he's a prisoner, but then he starts kind of learning their ways, and he's trying to help the one guy become shogun, essentially. And I read it because my husband, gave it to me to read. And it's just really not my cup of tea. It was interesting. I was very invested in it, but it's just not the type of thing I typically enjoy. And that was paired against Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. And yeah, I love this. So basically, she keeps getting pulled back into the past, where her ancestors are, and she's a slave in the past. And so she's having like navigate that as somebody who was born when slavery is no longer in existence. And I love that family component and such. I found it really interesting. But out of these two, Shogun definitely takes the cake for that. And part of that's probably because I spent so much time. Like, I read that, I think it took me like 6 months or something to read. Like, it took me a long time to read that book. So then, let's see here. We had Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. And this one really surprised me. So again, you have, I think it's World War II. It might be World War One. I think it's World War II. But I like the different characters you're following. You have a German character you're following. You have like all these different characters from different places and different like viewpoints of the war. And I just really liked how it was done, and I found it really, really enjoyable. And that's Against Molokai, by Alan Brennert. And this one's about a girl who has leprosy and gets sent to the leper colony on Molokai. And out of these two, they were both amazing, but because, I read a lot of war stories, so they're not as unique, I gotta go with Molokai. Like, I've never read a story like this. It was so moving, so heartfelt. You follow her from the time she's a kid and she develops leprosy and then into adulthood and such. And it's really, really beautiful. And I absolutely loved it. So that's definitely the winner there. Then we have, heavy one, So then we have The Paper Daughters of Chinatown by Heather B. Moore, which is based on a true story about this woman who ran a home for these girls and helped save these girls that were paper daughters. And the paper daughters are the ones they were sent over to America with false papers saying that they were going to be married and whatnot and have a better life in America, but they're actually sold into the sex trade. And so this woman goes and helps rescue them and such, and it's a really great story. And that's paired against the last book in the Other Land series, which is Sea of Silver Light. And out of these two, as amazing as this book was, I gotta give it to Sea of Silver Light. This one is based like it's a virtual reality, and you have Rainy, and these children are like going into like these comas, and they're like trapped in this virtual reality. So Rainy and a whole group of people end up in this virtual reality and are trying to figure out what's happened to these children. There's the secret brotherhood that they're trying to figure out what's going on with them. And it's just such a journey. Like it really takes you on a journey. And so that's why that one wins. Then we have Shark Heart, A Love Story by Emily Habeck. And this one, like, I wasn't sure, like, when I first started reading it, the chapters are super short, like, little snippets, and I really wasn't sure about it. And this book wrecked me. It wrecked me. Like, I bawled at one point. It's really beautiful. So basically, you have this man and this woman, they're just married, and they're in this world, people can transform into animals. It's like a disease, though, and he ends up having one of the rarest forms of this disease and transforms into a great white shark. And it's really about loss and, losing someone and, marriage, and it's beautiful. So there's that one, and it's paired against The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. And this one, it's following kind of like Dracula. So the historian, you have this young woman, and she's learning about like these events that happened to her dad. And there's like this mysterious book. There's a professor that disappears, and so it's partly through letters, partly through him telling her like the stories of the past. And it combines like the history of Vlad the Impaler with the lore of Dracula, and it's really, really cool. I hated the ending of it, but the rest of the story I found really intriguing, and I was very invested in it. But out of these two, I gotta go with Shark Heart. Like, it was just so good. So there's that one. Then we have our last two. And so we have Year Zero by Jeff Long. Again, another ABC title challenge. And this one, you have, so it's kind of like the biblical plague. So you have this man, and he's married to this woman, and her uncle is kind of blackmailing him. And so they go and find religious artifacts, and then the uncle sells them. And one of those artifacts these people end up releasing the plague. And so the world's being wiped out, and there's one last station of scientists who are working on trying to figure it out, maybe a way they can survive. But they're cloning people, and they're doing tests on those people. So I really like kind of the morality question of what's okay in the name of science. I thought that was really interesting. You kind of go on a journey with this man because he's in jail overseas, and he ends up trying to get back to the States so he can find his wife and daughter, ex-wife at this point, because he was in jail and she divorced him. And yeah, it's just really interesting, but there were some things that didn't need to be in there. The ending was kind of a little flat. This one, I think the premise was there. It needed to be better edited, I think is what was the case for this one. But it really stuck with me. It really did. And then the last one is My Sergei, A Love Story by Ekaterina Gordieva. I reread this every year. I try to reread it in December, because this is this was my mom's favorite pair skater back when, and then she's the one that introduced me to this book when I was a teenager, and so now every year I try to read it in December, like after Christmas, before her birthday, because her birthday's on the 29th. And yeah, it's so beautiful. It's very nostalgic for me because it makes me think of my mom. And when we watched, the Olympic figure skating and such. So it's very nostalgic. And I love rereading it. And so between these two, my Sergei definitely wins for sure. And so then let's see here. We have The Prison Healer against Shogun, and out of these two, some of what Shogun has faded a bit at this point, so The Prison Healer is definitely the winner between those two. Between Molokai and Sea of Silver Light, as immersed as this was and the journey that it was, Molokai is just such a unique story that I read and I absolutely loved it, so Molokai definitely wins. And then, let's put that down there. And then, between Sharkheart and My Sergei, this is a hard one, but actually, Sharkheart's gonna win on this one. It hit me so hard. This one still hits me hard every year, but I gotta go with Sharkheart. So, then we have, these are our top three. So, kind of bottom of the barrel, just because it's not as serious, not as touching, is The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. So, that is in third place there. In second place, I'm going to go with Molokai by Alan Brenner. Really, really enjoyed it, but first place has to go to Sharkheart because it completely wrecked me. I thought it was so beautiful. I love great white sharks. I like kind of that element of it. I found that really, really interesting. And yeah, just absolutely beautiful story. So that's my top three there. Now we gotta go to our top books by star rating. So first we're going to have The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. So this is a little prequel novellas. There's like 5 novellas from the Throne of Glass series. And I read this. I had read ACOTAR and didn't particularly like it. And so when I found this at the thrift store, I thought, you know what? Let's go ahead and give it a try. I'll give her a second chance and see if I enjoyed this series anymore. And these were, like I said, the little prequel novellas, and I absolutely fell in love. I really enjoyed it. So if you don't know Throne of Glass, you have Selena, and she's an assassin. And in Throne of Glass, she's in prison, and she gets pulled out of prison to take part in this competition to become the king's assassin, essentially. And so these are kind of the events before that and kind of how she ends up in prison. Really, really like that. And it's pitted against Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent, which is a little novella in the Crown of Nyaxia series, which is a compilation of duologies. And so this kind of is between the first duology. And this one has neurodivergent rep, and basically you have, what's her name, Lilith, and she makes a deal with this vampire for his blood, and in exchange for these roses, and it's just, I love the neurodivergent rep. I'm not a huge fan of novellas. This one was fully developed. I absolutely loved it, and so out of these two, Six Scorched Roses definitely wins there. I adored it. Then let's see here. Then we had A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. So this is a middle grade series about these 3 sisters, the Wittershin sisters. And there's this curse on their family and they're trapped on this island. And they end up going, I think they're like searching for their father or something. And I love the sisters. I really, really enjoyed this. And this one's actually pitted against one from the Impact category, and that's Kindred. So Kindred made it both, highest star rating and top 3 for the month that it was in. And I really, really like that. I like that family connection. I thought it was really kind of the commentary about it because, especially she's a Black woman and she faces her own challenges in present day, but it's still nothing compared to what her ancestors faced and such. And it's just, I really like that conversation. And then, like, her husband's trying to be supportive, but he's a white man and he can't really get it. Out of these two, Kindred actually wins that one. Then we had, let's see, the next two, we had Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. This is a serial killer romance. Definitely check trigger warnings if you're interested in reading this. Highly recommend the audio if you do pick it up, because there's a narrator for each of the main characters, so the main male and the main female. But most books, like, it's, that chapter's her point of view, so even the dialogue, it's all that character reading it. Where in this one, if it's the male character's dialogue, he jumps in, even though it's her chapter. He'll jump in, and so they kind of go back and forth and play off each other, which was really, really good. And that's against Good Different by Meg Eden Kuyat. And this is, I read this one for Autism Reads, which is put on by Christina and an autistic reader. That channel will be linked down below. And this is a story in verse, which I really enjoyed. And it's about this girl, and she's autistic, and she's trying to kind of navigate that and navigate, moving from elementary into middle school and such. And I thought this was so beautiful. It really hit, like, even now as an adult, like, it really hit. Like, there's a lot I could relate to. I think the first line is something about the evil place, which is Walmart, which my husband and I call it Hellmart. Yeah. Says, the first time I broke down in front of anyone was in the middle of the evil place, Walmart. So that just really hit. But honestly, out of these two, Butcher and Blackbird has it. Like, that was much more impactful to me and has stuck with me. Then, let's see here. We actually have another one from the other top three. And that is, or from the top three category. And that's Paper Daughters of Chinatown by Heather B. Moore. Again, it was something I didn't know about prior to reading this, and I found it really, really interesting. And the work this woman did was really good and really important. And then that one goes up against Throne of Glass. So I've already talked about what the series is about. But this was my top read of that month. So we have both Assassin's Blade and Throne of Glass. But out of these two, Throne of Glass has it. Like, I enjoyed this one, but it hasn't stuck with me as much as Throne of Glass has. So it has it out of those two. Then let's see here. We have... Oh. So we have The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. I've been loving Trisha Levenseller's writing. Everything I've read by this author, I absolutely love. This one in particular kind of reminds me, it gave me the same feels as my absolute favorite movie that I've seen so many times. I watch it to go to sleep. If I can't sleep, it just relaxes me, and that's Ever After with Drew Barrymore. And there was moments in here that kind of gave me that same feeling. But basically, in this one, you have, what's her name? Alessandra. And she decides she's gonna try to woo and marry the Shadow Prince. And he's being told he needs to marry. And so they actually end up with this, like, fake dating situation, which is fun, of course. But he has a secret, and there's a reason why he doesn't want to marry. And so she's trying to kill him, but she needs to marry him before she can kill him in order to get any sort of benefit. But there's other people trying to kill him as well, and so she's actually trying to save him in order to kill him later. And it's such a great time. And that's put up against Wisteria by Adeline Grace. I loved this whole series. This is the third. You have Belladonna, then Foxglove, and then this is the third one. This was my favorite. In Belladonna, you have Signa, and death kind of follows her. And then there's the death is a character. and I really enjoyed that. And you kind of have her cousin Blythe, and then in this third one you have Fate as well. And so this is more Blythe and Fate than Signa and Death. And I just absolutely loved it. But between the two of these, I gotta give it to Trisha Levenseller. I just love her writing so much. Then lastly, I forgot to grab the other one, so give me a second. Alright, so now we have our last ones. And so these are actually both holiday books. So first we have Kapunamuk, Wea Chuman's Thanksgiving Story. This is written by Danielle Greendeer, Anthony Perry, and Alexis Button, with illustrations by Gary Meaches Sr. And so I actually saw this. I follow the Contoured Librarian on TikTok, and she had read this book to her students and taught them to make these like little corn crafts. And so I was like, ooh, I want to read that book. And it's the Thanksgiving story told from the Native Americans' point of view, and has Native American story and lore. And I really enjoyed it. The illustrations are stunning, like so beautiful. And so yeah, we have that one. And then it's pitted against Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. And so I read this for Christmas and just had such a great time with it. So this one, you have two friends. They're very close, and they start fake dating because she's on the verge of losing her tree farm, and she has this opportunity with a like social media influencer, but in her application she said that she owns the farm with her boyfriend, and so he pretends to be her boyfriend, but they're friends, and it starts developing. I really liked the way the conflict was. He never like made her feel bad or anything, because it's kind of like a little misunderstanding. She's thinking one way and he's thinking another. And yeah, I just had such a great time with it. Between these two, Love Light Farms is going to take it. Like, as much as I enjoyed this, it is a children's book. And so it's definitely going to kind of stick with me. It's one I'm probably going to read every November, but I gotta give it to Love Light Farms for sure. So there are those. Now let's see here. So we have against each other, we have Six Scorched Roses and Kindred. And out of these two, I gotta go with Six Scorched Roses. I love Carissa Broadbent's writing. Everything I've read from her has been 5 stars. And I absolutely love it. As much as I really enjoyed Kindred, and I actually went on kind of a rabbit hole of reading some of this author's other books, I gotta give it to Carissa Broadbent for sure. Then we have, let's see here, Butcher and Blackbird against Throne of Glass. And out of these two, I gotta go with Butcher and Blackbird. Again, like the way the audio, the way they played off, the humor. I like how it kind of lightened up the darker themes of the book. And it was just such a fun time. I gotta give it to them. And then this one was really, really hard because I loved both of these, but I gotta go with Trisha Levenseller. She's definitely a favorite author right now, and I've loved, again, everything I've read from her. And so yeah, I think last year she was in the top as well. So out of these, I think third place is gonna go to Butcher and Blackbird. As much as I enjoy it, it's just didn't hit me as much as the other two. Second place, I'm going to go with Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. As much as I love it, it is a novella, and this, like I said, it gave me the same feels as my favorite movie. I gotta go with Shadows Between Us as the number one book for the year, for sure. So we have, let's see here. So here is our top 6 books of the year. I think if I'm pitting them against each other, I think all the star rated books definitely would win over like the books of impact for sure. And I already buried my worst books of the year, so we're not going to worry about those. But yeah, those are my stats and my best and worst books of the year. I would love to know if you've read any of these books, if you're interested in reading any of these books, what your favorite book from 2024 was. I would love to know that down in the comments below. If you don't know what to comment, you just kind of want to know, let me know you are here, you're helping to support the channel by leaving a comment. You can always leave a rabbit or any type of animal emoji. Maybe if they have a shark, I don't know if they do, but if they have a shark, maybe leave that. Otherwise, a rabbit or a blackbird. You can really leave anything. I'll leave that down in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.